On this episode, we discuss Netflix adding a way to disable auto previews. Apparently, BioWare is completely overhauling Anthem. There were multiple glitches with Boeing Starliner. An exploit was discovered in Philips Hue. And Chris tells us how Amazon is still crushing it with smart speakers. This and more in this week's show.
I'm Haley from Gallifrey Public Radio, a Doctor Who fandom podcast and part of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the show you're checking out now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting geeky shows at GonnaGeekNetwork.com.
This is the official GonnaGeek.com show. Each week, we run down the latest news and happenings in the world of geek. These are your hosts for the show, Steven, Chris, and SP.
Welcome to an all-new episode of the official GonnaGeek.com show. I am Stephen John Drew, and I am pleased to say that Chris Farrell's here again this week.
Why, pray tell, would you think otherwise?
We're also happy to say that SP's here this week. Hey, SP!
Hey, Steven, I'm just jazzing out to the intro music thinking we need a live band for this. We do. I think we do.
I do have a live band. You didn't know that? Literally, they come in every single Monday.
You need to set up a camera on them because I want to jam out with them.
Can we get a mariachi band one week then just to shake things up a little bit?
I don't see why not. It seems doable. Yeah, we're here to talk about some of the latest geek news happenings. This is going to be an all geek news show. So if you're looking for the segment where Chris Farrell reviews the latest beard trimmers, you can go ahead and wait for a future week. I heard that that's going to happen.
I do need a new beard trimmer, actually.
True story. I just ordered one yesterday.
And if you are only checking us out on the audio side of things, all three of us have beards. So this is the official Gonna Geek Beardcast. I believe that is the official name. Before we get into the news, though, I do have something that I'd like to quickly touch on here. Last night, I decided I don't like myself. That's what I decided was I don't like myself.
I don't know if we can help you with that here, Steven.
I mean, you're talking about something you want to touch, and now you're talking about you don't like yourself. I'm really afraid of where we're going from here.
I mean, I pride myself on my general positivity as of late, but I'm really not sure how I can help you on this front. I'm going to say, Steven, we accept you as you are.
Well, you might be able to, but here's the thing is I discovered that after a hiatus of not being on any streaming service other than some crummy one that shoved commercials in all sorts of the place, Star Trek movies were finally back on Canadian streaming. They were for a while only available on a service that you literally had to watch through commercials. It was stupid. I don't know how they got the rights. I discovered they were finally on Amazon Prime Video. Don't know how long they've been there, but I'm like, cool, just stumbled across this. And I thought to myself, I don't like Star Trek, the motion picture. Maybe I should watch it because it's been like a decade since I watched it. And I thought, why not?
Wait a minute. How did you get from I don't like Star Trek, the motion picture to I need to watch Star Trek, the motion picture?
Because it has been like literally 10 years since I've watched it. It has been a very, very long time.
So you went from I don't like Star Trek, the motion picture to it's been so long that I'm not sure if I remember how much I don't like Star Trek, the motion picture. So I need to watch Star Trek, the motion picture to pick up how much I don't like it.
No, it was just, I haven't watched this in a long time. Why don't I punch myself in the face? That's what it was.
So it was a hate watch or a legit, I don't remember how much I hate this.
It was let me see if I hate it less than I used to.
You're not supposed to practice spite-based decision-making on yourself.
Steven, do you regularly step on rakes to see if you hate that feeling? I mean, because that's effectively what you did, is you stepped on a rake and hit yourself in the face and went, oh, and then tried it again by watching the movie again and went, oh. It's like that episode of The Simpsons with Silent Bob when Silent Bob is from Jay and Silent Bob. Oh my God, Sideshow Bob. That's who I meant. When he keeps stepping on the race and going, oh, this is what you did. You Sideshow Bobbed yourself.
I can't argue with you. I have no good reason, but and here's the worst part is I actually discovered it earlier in the day, to which I said to myself, I'm going to try to watch it in the day. And then I didn't have a chance. And then it was like 8:00 at night. My wife was watching some stuff on TLC that I choose not to watch. And I'm like,
Was it Kate plus 8?
I don't know what it was, but I was like,
okay.
I was like, I'm going to still watch this. And I literally stayed up a little later than usual just to finish it. And I don't have any reason why I was so motivated, but I did. And I have to say, I dislike it even more now, 10 years later, because now I truly appreciate the terrible decisions that were made creatively with those films. Not only is it a boring plot, not only do they use way too many stupid exterior shots to show off all of their little models that they spent money on.
Hey, the models are badass. Don't trash the models.
Yeah, I mean, there's not all bad here.
I have an appreciation for how poor of a decision it was creatively, music-wise. Within the first 20 minutes, I heard the bloody theatrical version of the Star Trek theme song like 8 different ways. It was like the only song that they had, and no cohesion at all for the uniforms that I completely forgot about. I knew they were terrible uniforms, but it's like off Kirk goes. He's like, I'm going to go do his mission. And then he comes on back in a different uniform. And then Bone shows up with his like 70s, hey, it's the Bee Gees.
That's to sell toys. That's to sell toys.
Terrible creative decisions on that. And the plot is just garbage. And I was disappointed that I forgot that the Voyager was a fake Voyager. I thought it was actually Voyager 1 or 2. I forgot they made up a Voyager.
It was Voyager 6, right? It was Voyager. Oh my gosh. So Star Trek the Motion Picture wasn't all that bad. I mean,
Just
it was
90% bad.
Well, I mean, it depends on your point of view. If
The right point of view.
you didn't have Star Trek. When was this film made? It was released in 1978 or 79. It was released in 1979. So that's 10 years of no Trek. And so you get Trek on the big screen. As far as the uniforms, this is Starfleet. They're not supposed to have uniforms. They're supposed to in hospitals where you have like orderlies and nurses and they all have different colored scrubs and you have no idea who's actually doing what. That's kind of like what they were doing here. It was like everybody had their own scrubs.
It was a complete departure from everything that Star Trek had before. The only difference being that Kirk did occasionally change. The rest of them had a consistent look, and this was not the case with the movie. Everything was different. So it was worse than I remembered. And honestly, I think I might have to go back and literally time every bloody second, every bloody minute that they excessively showed an exterior of something that didn't need to be as long, because it was longer than I remembered. My God, it was terrible. Now I've made myself mad.
Stephen Collins on it, though. I mean, Stephen Collins. It was his one shot at Star Trek.
I will admit that I forgot that Kirk kind of just came in and was like, I know what I'm doing. And they're like, you don't know this ship.
Stephen Collins was the captain who lost the ship, right?
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Doesn't that actor in a bit of legal troubles after Seventh Heaven? We might not want to be reflecting too kindly upon him based on those legal troubles.
No, you're absolutely correct. There was definitely some problems there.
So you're saying there's no redeemable qualities whatsoever with Star Trek the Motion Picture?
I like the music.
I don't like the music because it's worn within 20 minutes. Terrible.
This is the hill we die on. A flick from 1979 that most people don't like. We're going to debate.
You're crapping all over Jerry Goldsmith.
Today I went and I posted a poll on Twitter and I asked the following. I said, how long has it been since you watched Star Trek the Motion Picture? And 62% of the people said between 0 and 5 years. And 25% said 6 to 9 years ago. And 12% said 10 plus years ago. So if you're within either of the later categories, go ahead and hate watch it if you want. It was pretty terrible. I also did ask our live audience if they liked the motion picture, and 75% of the people said they do like it. 25% said they don't like it, and sadly disappointed that nobody said did not respond to the third option, which was 70s bulges for everyone. I'm talking about the uniform bulges.
So on Twitter, you neglected there was an option that was missing, and it should have been there was a Star Trek the motion picture.
So if you are here in the United States listening to this show and you want to rewatch Star Trek the motion picture to share in Steven's feelings or relive those, You can find it on Amazon Prime Video or Hulu if you're subscribed to either of those services. So it is part of your subscription. Otherwise, you can rent it from Amazon, YouTube, Google Play, Vudu, Microsoft, Redbox, and pretty much all of your streaming services. You can rent it from for anywhere between $3 to $4.
Or if you happen to have an entire set of Star Trek movies on Blu-ray, like this guy, then you can just watch it there.
I have them too, and I imagine Steven probably does, but he probably threw the motion picture out when he got it, just in a pure act of spite.
Believe it or not, I don't actually have it.
Right.
You don't even have the VHS?
No,
Or did your brother get that copy?
He probably got that.
He has the laser disc, Steven. He has the laser disc edition.
Well, on that note, let's go ahead and move to something a little bit more uplifting, which is the news. All right, let's kick it off actually with some news that I think people will like, and it's all to do with Netflix. If you didn't know this, Netflix for a while has been running a feature where it auto plays on many devices, not all devices, but many devices, it auto plays as you're thumbing through a movie or a TV show. Sometimes it's auto playing the episode, sometimes it's playing a preview. It really depends on what it is. And this has been a hot topic for some people because they haven't wanted this. For me, I haven't minded it personally, but it is something that some people were very, very frustrated with. Well, Netflix has heard the people, and according to @Netflix on Twitter, they said, quote, "Some people find this feature helpful, others not so much. We've heard the feedback loud and clear. Members can now control whether or not they see autoplay previews on Netflix. Here's how," to which they gave instructions. And on the instructions, there's a couple different options there that you can turn off the autoplay next episodes in a series on all devices, or you can turn off the autoplay preview while browsing on all devices. So obviously the next episode one being the part that I mentioned earlier, and then the previews being the preview options when they are there. This is something that, again, like I mentioned, some people are very, very frustrated with, and I went browsing down the reply comments on that Twitter, and I couldn't believe how many people were truly excited about this feature. For me personally, I kind of like the play next episode when you're doing a binge watch. I just concluded a couple months ago a DS9 rewatch, and I loved it. Every time that I would start to go and, play the next episode when I'd walked away for a little bit, it was right there. Boom, in it goes, and I didn't have to wait. There was no lag. It was fantastic. I quite like that feature. I don't know that I'm going to turn it off. The preview thing, maybe. I guess I could turn that off. I don't really pay attention to the previews on Netflix, but they've never irritated me either.
No, they're annoying.
SP, I know you also found them annoying as well, right?
I did. One of the reasons I found them annoying is I have a refurbished Roku Premiere Plus that doesn't quite work right in my main bedroom. And so every time I would thumb through and it would start this autoplay, it would cause a surge into my sound bar. And it was the only time it ever happened. And I just wanted to shut it off. And I found out that I couldn't shut it off. So I stopped watching Netflix through the Roku Premiere Plus that's refurbished up in my room. I do have plans to upgrade that eventually, but I just haven't had a good deal enough for it. So yeah, the Netflix autoplay has been bugging the crap out of me for that singular reason.
How come you find it annoying, Chris?
Because it starts when you're browsing through a menu and you may not have adjusted your volume when you first start things up. It just starts blasting audio out at you and you're like, what the hell? I don't want you to start playing things for me unless I tell you to explicitly play. It annoys me. Now, I'm glad they put this feature in, but you know what's really annoying about it?
What?
You can't control it from the apps. You have to log into the website and do it. You can't go into the settings on your app and be like, stop autoplay. You have to go log on to Netflix.com, find it in their settings there, and stop it from going.
In all fairness, I agree, it's stupid, it's annoying. But in all fairness, there are several Netflix features that are like that. For example, the bandwidth adjustment. You also can't do that from the app.
That's fair.
It doesn't make it a good decision, though.
All of their apps, at least that I have used on Apple TV, Roku, Fire TV Stick, built in on my Vizio TV upstairs, they all do this autoplay.
Yeah.
They all do. I should be able to toggle this setting. under one of these and have it propagate out to every instance of when my account signs in and stops this. I'm glad they put it out there. They could have made it easier to do because let's be honest, in today's world, when's the last time you logged into Netflix on your PC or your laptop?
15 seconds ago, so I could turn off autoplay.
Okay, aside from that, when was the last time you logged into Netflix on your PC?
Yesterday when I wanted to see if Star Trek was still on Netflix.
Well, okay, so what I'm getting at here is most people don't consume this content on their PCs anymore. They're consuming it on their tablets, their cell phones, or probably their streaming boxes, probably in something close to that order.
I agree. I actually, me personally, I do actually watch streaming on my desktop or laptop quite a bit, but I equally do the app, and I also recognize that I'm an exception to that. I think there are probably lots of people who would have to go looking for their Netflix password to get into their account on the desktop. So I totally hear what you're saying. And again, I think that it is stupid. And I actually said that about some of the options that were on there. Now, the only thing that you should remember with the fact that it's not on the app is this does prevent your siblings or your friend or your other friend or your other friend who are using your account from changing the setting.
So first of all, you should be using a password manager like LastPass. I know there's other ones. I use LastPass, so it doesn't matter if you forget your password or not. You can always go back to LastPass to find it out. Second of all, why in tarnation would you give out your Netflix account to anybody outside your household that you might be related? Never mind.
Moving on to the next news point here. I can't believe that this is still in the news. I feel like JS was on this show when we first talked about this. What's going on with Anthem, Chris?
So we had talked about Anthem off and on for years, and JS and I had talked about it as an aside. And for those that aren't familiar, it's a game by BioWare. I am a self-admitted BioWare fanboy. Some of my favorite games of all time are the Mass Effect trilogy, Knights of the Old Republic, and even Jade Empire to a lesser extent. So I generally get pretty enthused for BioWare games, at least until Mass Effect Andromeda came along, and I found it kind of disappointing. And then we saw that BioWare was putting out Anthem, which was supposed to be their open world, fly around with like Iron Man with all sorts of guns, complete quests and missions. Looked like it would be a ton of fun. Then the beta came out. I didn't play. I played the beta. Went, I'm canceling my pre-order. And I was kind of glad I did. I felt bad for certain folks like Anthony Bachman, my co-host on a different podcast, who bought the limited Legion of Dawn edition, which was like $90, and started playing the game. And at launch, it was incredibly buggy, broken, and a lot of people got turned off on it. So here's how they tried to get people back into the game. And it actually worked because I've purchased it and I've played it off and on the past 2 weeks. Black Friday sales, I picked up Anthem for $9.99 for the same $90 collector's edition that Anthony Bachman bought when it came out almost a year ago. For $9.99, I said, you know what? I'm going to give this game a try. And I've enjoyed it off and on. When it works, it's really fun, but there's weird connectivity issues from time to time. It would randomly crash and not save my progress. So it's a flawed game. But luckily, I only paid $9.99, so I can sort of get over it. But it's had a rough time post-launch. A lot of players have criticized the game's lack of content, a poor loot progression system, meaning as you kill things, you're not really getting good loot to continue leveling up your character, and a lack of some types of in-game content available for the launch game. Basically meaning once you beat the story, there wasn't much left to do besides just random multiplayer missions online. There was no ongoing single-player quests, anything like that, so it was kind of boring. Now, in all fairness, BioWare has done a lot of patching in the last year. They've kind of streamlined some of the broken processes that were in there, done some mini events and things like that. But they did announce today in a blog post they're going to slow down production on Anthem because they are going to redesign the game. Their goal is going to be, quote, to reinvent the core gameplay loop with clear goals, motivating challenges, and progression with meaningful rewards, end quote. Effectively, try and make it more fun is what it comes down to. Anthem will continue to be online in its current state until the design is ready for launch. BioWare is going to continue to run some in-game events, refresh the online store where you can buy crafting materials or different skins for your armors, and will occasionally revisit some of the past seasonal and Cataclysm content that they have put out already, so that those players that are still continuing to play Anthem will have something to do while they wait for the new version of the game. Now, they don't give any kind of indication as to when this redesign is going to come out, but they did say it will take several months. On top of that, the post does say one of the goals of the redesign is, quote, to do something we'd like to have done from the very first time around, giving a focused team the time to test and iterate, focusing on the gameplay first, end quote. One of the big problems with this game, if you guys didn't realize, is they didn't have it quite figured out. So they built the entire game in like the year up to launch instead of, a longer development schedule because they hadn't quite figured out what was going on. So it sounds like this is getting the Star Wars Battlefront 2 treatment and some other EA games we've seen out there where they rushed to get it out, the fans didn't like it, and now they're going to redesign it and try and make it better. So if they can make it better, that's great. My hope is this doesn't turn into an Anthem 2.0 that you then have to buy paid DLC or something like that to get the update, because those fans that bought it at launch deserve better. People like me who were the fools went, haha, it's $9.99, I'm going to try the game. Maybe we should pay something if anyone was going to. But if you're one of the folks that bought at launch for $60 or $90, I really hope the EA, who is known for not exactly being the kindest to their customers at times, does not decide to exploit them and be like, hey, we know you hated this game, but we fixed it and we'll give it to you for a cost of $10 or something like that, because the hate is very strong on this. And there are a lot of fans, myself included, who went, BioWare has kind of gone downhill since EA purchased them. And to be honest, all of the games that have come out have steadily declined in how much I've enjoyed them since Electronic Arts purchased them. And that worries me. I hope they fix Anthem. They're saying all the right things. I just don't know if it's savable at this point.
Yeah, this has writing all over the wall of just being a last-ditch effort to try to make some level of significant money with it, and it being a disaster. It seems too little too late, because the release date on this was, a year ago?
March of last year, if I recall correctly. So almost a year.
It seems like too little too late for sure. That's my thoughts.
I understand that a bit of goodwill is necessary here. However, how can you justify as a business devoting resources to recode either a fix, an update, a patch, an extension of the game, and not get any money back from it at all? I mean, maybe not $10, maybe $1.99, maybe $2, something like that. But you gotta have it cost something. Otherwise,
I think their plan is to do what other games like Destiny and things have done, which is when the fan base started to taper out, reinvigorate the fan base with new content, and then bring people back so that not necessarily they're paying for that content, but the microtransactions in the store is where they continue to make that money, because you can buy skins and crafting material to your heart's content, which really does not directly impact the game, but makes you look cool and have fancy, pretty armor. And there's some people that are all about that and have spent hundreds of dollars in games like this on microtransactions to get just that perfect skin for their character so they can make their character look cool. I am not one of those, but if you go and look at like some Fortnite gamers and other folks that are playing games loaded with microtransactions, that's the way ahead. It's not necessarily we're going to make you buy more DLC. It's we're going to keep you hooked so that you spend microtransaction bucks on stuff.
What kind of Satanist group sells human skins?
All the video game industry. And there's a little game called Dead by Daylight that actually probably literally sells human skins because you can skin some humans in it.
Oh, okay. The other thing that I think is important to remember with this, I think that's a valid line of thought that you had there, SP. But the other thing to remember is that they have invested a certain amount of money into it now. It probably hasn't met the sales they were looking for. So they're looking to spend more money to hopefully recoup those costs by creating a flare up with people buying the game too, in addition to the microtransactions that Chris was mentioning.
But the game, remember, this is a game that now is regularly priced at $20 and goes on sale on a regular basis on both PS4 and Xbox for $9.99. So you're not going to make a ton of money based off of software sales. Your money's going to come from microtransactions. And they did make a point of saying when this game came out that their intent was not to be putting out tons of paid DLC. In fact, I believe at one point they had said they were going to not do paid DLC. You bought the game and then you bought all of the seasons passes and upgrades and stuff that came with it. And that primarily Their plan was to use microtransactions to continue to monetize it, which it's the way the business works. I'm glad in this case that the way this one works is I don't have to pay to win, which was the problem with Star Wars Battlefront 2 when it came out, which they then fixed and patched out the fact that if you wanted to unlock all the heroes, you basically had to pay hundreds of dollars. So it's the nature of how the gaming industry works, and we're sort of swinging away now from pay to win, thankfully.
Okay. Okay. I couldn't remember because I've never played it, but I couldn't remember if I bought it or not. It just went on my Amazon purchase history. I pre-ordered it on February 8th, 2019 for $59.99.
This game?
Yes. Oh.
You know what? Still not as painful as watching the motion picture. Sorry.
I've never played it. I have it, and I've never played it. Oh my gosh.
Well, if you want to play it on Xbox, I'm up to like level 28 right now, and I'm just tooling around in the open world. I'll be glad to help you out.
My return window closed on March 24th, 2019.
Oh, you can sell it to GameStop for about $2.50 if you want it. That's only store credit. If you want cash, it'll be $1.50.
And in all fairness, we don't know that GameStop won't be under by the time you get there. That's a possibility too.
That's true.
I just totally forgot I actually have this game. So now I got to give it a spin and see how terrible it really is.
You know, it's actually not as bad as it was at launch.
Yeah, but now I've got to spend 3 days updating it.
Yeah, it was a pretty hefty update when I installed it. 36 gig update, I think is what it was when I did the install.
Well, before we move on to the next news point, I did ask a poll on Geeks.live. That's right. We record the show live on Mondays at 8:45 p.m. Eastern at Geeks.live. Do you think there's still possible success with BioWare's Anthem, to which we had 20% say yes, there's still a chance. 60% said no, will fail. And 20% said it is already a success. So lots of confidence. Moving on to the next news point here, you got something about Boeing, SP. What's going on with Boeing? I'm assuming you're talking about Oliver Queen's Boeing. Is that right?
Boeing? So I have been talking a lot on this podcast about SpaceX, about Boeing. We got to get the US back into space, right? So Boeing had this Starliner test. It had a software glitch and it didn't reach orbit, but they said, don't worry about it. We got it. And we're going to be on track to go up to the International Space Station and launch astronauts up there. Well, not so fast, because according to a space.com article this past week by Hanneke Weltering, they discovered a little bit more than the one glitch. So 7 weeks after Boeing CST-100 Starliner failed to reach the International Space Station as planned during its first orbital flight test, NASA and Boeing officials disclosed the preliminary results of an investigation into what went wrong. In a teleconference with reporters on Friday, February 7th, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine said that an independent review team has identified several issues during the orbital flight test, or OFT, mission. Along with the previously disclosed error with Starliner's onboard timer, there was a second software issue that could have potentially led to a slight but problematic collision of two of the spacecraft's components. I don't think that's slight, by the way. You have two spacecraft that collide in space. That's really bad.
Yeah, I don't see that as a slight problem.
Right. Okay. So the second software problem was discovered before the spacecraft's return to Earth. This glitch could have potentially led to a collision between Starliner's crew module and its service module, which are designed to separate in orbit before the crew module lands. Boeing officials called this a, quote, a valve mapping error, unquote. So, quote, this is from John Mulholland. He is the vice president and program manager of Boeing Starliner's program. He said, quote, during what we call free flight, when the crew module is attached to the service module, there's a certain valve mapping, and the flight computers on the crew module command all of the individual thruster firings. But after you separate the launch vehicle from the crew module, the propulsion controllers on the service module have to conduct those thruster firings to get the proper separation and disposable burn. That valve mapping is different in those two cases, and the software unfortunately had the same valve mapping for both of those conditions, so we had an incorrect valve mapping for the separation and disposal berm. The team very quickly recoded the software, re-verified it in the labs, and we were able to upload that software correction and safely complete the mission, unquote. Now, if Boeing hadn't caught that glitch before Starliner came back to Earth, the two modules could have bumped into each other after separation, which could have destabilized the crew module during a critical point in its descent. Also, I might add, you might have damaged the heat shield, you might have injected a leak point in the spacecraft, so the atmosphere inside the spacecraft could have vented, thus causing an instability in the space, because basically it acts like a thruster, so you destabilize the spacecraft. So I think this was really marginal. I mean, this was like, oh, don't worry, we got this. Guys, this is a huge issue. You have stuff colliding in space.
Yeah.
It is not like a car accident, like a fender bender.
Isn't a bump in space kind of a big deal? Because physics says
Well,
that's
see,
a big deal.
that's what, like, I wanted to give the benefit of the doubt here and say, like, I love space stuff, but I am relatively uneducated when it comes to actual what is a reasonable practical margin of possible errors and things like this. When I looked at this, I'm quote, the team very quickly recoded the software, end quote. Very quickly recoded. That does not sound good. Having a time crunch to recode software, that's not good. And so I'm like, am I making this up that this is a big deal? Is this like a normal thing that happens?
This is like Felicity in the aero bunker going clickety, clickety, tackety, tackety, tackety really quick in order to fix it. No, this is a huge deal.
Oh my God.
Think of the Martian, right? So the Martian, he Iron Manned it by pumping a hole in his hand, and he tried to redirect himself. Now in the Martian, it was CGI. It was made for movies and it was dramatic and everything. But basically that atmosphere venting out of his suit propelled him. The same thing can happen in this case. And like I said, even the heat shield could be damaged, or the retro rockets could be damaged and they couldn't fire properly, and you end up with a too steep an angle, too narrow an angle, and the thing burns up in the atmosphere. Yeah, this is a little bit of a big deal.
And to remind us, people on things soon from Boeing, is that right?
Yeah, matter of fact, to the live audience, I just NASA in their Instagram on their story today, they had a thing saying, we will return astronauts to space. The U.S. will return astronauts to space in 2020. I'm thinking, on what? Because SpaceX isn't ready yet. Boeing's not ready yet.
Yeah.
You guys are a little bit jumping the gun here.
This is insane. Insane to me that, we got things. Okay, this is what I was worried about when I said I really, really like space races, but have concerns over what the companies do when they run into problems. Because there's two avenues. They take it and the space race causes them to make sure something is really super safe, and like they want to make sure they have the best bang for the buck sort of thing. And so it's a super safe system. Or they rush to try to beat people. And I'm worried. And I'm worried partially because it's Boeing. And I'll leave it at that.
But wait, there's more.
Okay.
A third major problem was discovered that Starliner encountered during its orbital flight test, and it wasn't related to the spacecraft software, but rather had to do with interference that disrupted communications between ground controllers and the Starliner. The investigative review team is still working to determine the exact cause of this interference. However, it appears to be associated with cell phone towers. Yes, you're holding your cell phone tower wrong. NASA expects to have the complete final report by the end of February.
This is scary. Okay, like this is to the point that this is I'm lost for words. How often am I at a loss for words?
I knew this was going to happen. As a matter of fact, I probably said it before on the podcast here as we're talking about these whole things. Space travel is dangerous. It takes a while to actually test out things. I'm glad that they are taking these steps to test out things. But before I put a human on any one of these, there is going to be an automatic flight that goes up to the space station, comes back down, and it is flawless. It has the communication, the software is working just fine, the rockets are working just fine, the emergency escape system is working just fine, tested, proven, and ready to go. All this has to happen. I don't think it's going to happen in 2020.
Okay, so the two big things that I have right here is, number one, NASA today, as you said, putting out a thing saying we're sending people from America soon. Obviously showing their push behind this. Hopefully SpaceX and Boeing are smart enough to say, hold the phone. But secondly, the third problem there, the other two are all things that, you would expect to come out of the wash with test flights. The interruption from an external source associated with cell phone towers, that is not something that was guaranteed to have happened during this test. That is something that somebody built this thing without factoring in that possible interference. And that very well could have gone flawlessly on this test and the next one. And then what would have happened when we sent people? And that's the concern that I have there, is like, that aspect of it was not properly analyzed.
The question I have, and I'm curious about, is the cell phone tower interference. Is that a result of 3G, 4G, or 5G signals? Because we've seen there's issues coming up with 5G that nobody wants to talk about. But we keep seeing these commercials where 5G cellular networks are disruptive to weather radars that we use to predict hurricanes and weather patterns and things like that. But we don't care because I need to download a porn in 3 seconds on my cell phone on the subway or some nonsense like that.
In all fairness, that's a good reason, Chris.
Okay. I mean, it's an oversimplification. There are awesome potentials for 5G, but I'm not necessarily sure it's worth what could happen when it comes to our ability, to predict the weather. So that's why I was really curious. Is it 5G that's the culprit in this case as well for Starliner, or is it just regular cell phone interference, for lack of a better term?
I don't think it's 5G. I don't think there's enough 5G out there for this to be an actual concern right now. I think this had to be 4G, possibly even 3G LTE. I don't think you're talking 5G at this point to cause such an interference. And I don't even know if it's the United States cell towers that caused the interference. This could have been an interference on the other side of the planet. There's ground stations in Australia that we share with the Australians. There's ground stations all over the place. And then also we have the communications satellites, the TDRS satellites that also communicate back and forth. And those are from ground stations. Also, Chris, you should be well aware of this. You're in West Virginia, right?
That is correct.
So West Virginia has a dead zone for this big radio telescope, and the people that are living there, they cannot have Wi-Fi, they cannot have cell phones, they cannot have anything. And if you're driving anywhere near, you're not going to have any sort of cell phone reception at all. And it's not due to the mountains. It's due to the fact that there's no cell towers there. And that is to limit the electromagnetic interference with the actual big, huge radio telescope that is going far out to do communications with such things like Voyager, taking radiation readings from the far side of the universe, that sort of thing.
By the way, we don't talk about Voyager anymore after last night. I just too sore of a spot. It does not happen.
We don't talk about Voyager. We talk about Voyager. I talked about Voyager last episode. We can talk about Voyager all I want. Anyway, so you have all this stuff going on to limit it, but that is very delicate communications. I think in this age of digital communications that you can spread the spectrum enough and do surging enough with the electromagnetic waves that you can eat through it. I think this is an issue of trying to get the receiver to be programmed correctly on board the spacecraft. I could be mistaken, could be totally mistaken, but as a communications quote unquote expert, this is what I'm thinking.
Well, we'll see what happens here. It's interesting to me to see those three things happen. And I did run a poll at geeks.live asking, do you have faith in Boeing's space endeavors? And out of the legitimate answers, it was a 50-50 split. However, the actual true nature left it at basically the third option, which was the only faith I have is in George Michael.
What about faith of the heart?
No, that's not happening. That's not happening.
Where's the Baltar answer?
Moving on to the next news
Steven,
point
I'm
here.
sad.
Let's talk briefly about Philips Hue. I know this is something that Chris Farrell's a big fan of. He loves Philips Hue. He's got Philips Hue all through his whole house.
I do?
That's what he tells me. No, he doesn't.
I don't have a single Philips Hue product currently.
All right. So the next news point is about Philips Hue and a problem with Philips Hue. So the problem here comes with that there was a hack that was recently released saying that there was a compromise that came through the Zigbee platform, which took advantage of a glitch within the Philips Hue hub. If you didn't know this, the way that Philips Hue works is there's a central brain, a hub that Philips Hue controls, and then it talks to the individual bulbs over a technology frequency called Zigbee. Like that's basically the transmission platform between the bulb and the bridge. And so this was a hack that came out, and how it worked was that hackers were able to take control of older model Hue bulbs through a Zigbee flaw. So within that Zigbee protocol, they were able to take control of it. And what they would do would be to turn off or change the color of the light, essentially cause a little bit of nefarious activity to happen so that the user would think that something's wrong and then go and try to re-add it, repair it. It's often the first step if something goes wrong. And then what would happen when they went to repair it would the hackers would then go and do a process that was sending a, quote, heap-based buffer overload, end quote, to the bridge. Essentially, they sent a bunch of information through the Zigbee protocol using this repair option, where it would then overload the Philips Hue bridge, which then would allow compromise to the network that the Philips Hue bridge was on.
Would the bridge need to be a rainbow bridge?
It would need to be a rainbow bridge. You're 100% correct on that because Philips Hue multicolored bulbs. You nailed it.
And Thor and Asgard. Yeah.
This was a very specific way that they were able to compromise it, and Philips Hue had patched it by the time this was all released. So they went and they patched the bridge so this couldn't happen. But I wanted to highlight this right now because I think, number one, it's worth considering. It's a very specific thing. This would have had to be somebody who knew you had this around and had to be near you to get into it. I'm sure there's technology that they can scan for the Zigbee. So if your neighbor was up to no good, would be able to quickly tell that you've got it. But it's something that they would have to be nearby. Then you'd have to have the older bulb, and then you'd have to overload the network. And anyways, the very specific set of circumstances. But I think it's worth considering the whole concept of general Internet of Things and possible compromises that you get because of Internet of Things. I'm a big advocate myself of putting your IoT devices on an independent network. I think, if anything, this highlights the possible problems with the Wi-Fi products that are generic Wi-Fi products, because most of them run on the same platform, the same firmware, the same backend. And I'll tell you, there's not a lot of firmware updates that come with that. I know from experience, and they are all running on the same thing. And if you have something that is rarely updated, that is massively redistributed, that's a lot of people, a lot of devices to potentially want to compromise. And we even talked on here, I think Chris shared a story years ago about how a bunch of IoT devices were compromised to do nefarious things, and it caused the internet to go down and whatnot. So I think that it's worth, and by the way, don't yell at me for saying the internet to go down. I'm talking practically. I think that it is worth thinking about and using this as sort of a opportunity to think, if you've got a lot of different devices and you don't have a dedicated IoT network, maybe you want one.
So what you're saying is that Ragnarok destroyed Asgard because the Rainbow Bridge was compromised through Philips Hue.
And Taika Waititi won an Oscar writing that story, right?
I'll go with that. I'm always worried about Internet of Things, especially because of the big hack that happened before, and other devices like microwaves, refrigerators, big ticket items like stoves that have, and cars now that have a limited amount of horsepower behind them. And as we go 2-3 generations ahead with the rest of our Internet of stuff, refrigerators, sometimes 15, 20 years in a house. And if you have a smart refrigerator, it's not going to be smart in 15 or 20 years. It's going to be really dumb.
Really
And
dumb.
it's going to be really susceptible to being hacked. Now, what are the ways to fix that? Well, you just don't connect it to your house anymore, and you switch off the smart stuff and you just treat it like a dumb refrigerator. Same with microwaves and stoves and stuff like that. But yeah, this can happen. It happens with Philips Hue. It's going to happen with other things. I know that there's been a lot of work into making sure that this doesn't happen again after the, big internet attack a few years ago that Chris talked about, but it's still possible. And if you can limit it in your own house, then why don't you limit it and not get stuff that's going to get hacked in 5 years? Now, if you're the type of person that buys a new refrigerator every 5 years, you should be fine. But for the rest of the population, I wouldn't be doing that. I wouldn't buy a smart device that you're intending to keep for 10 years.
Agreed. No, I mean, and like Steven said, practice the best practices. Put all your IoT things on a separate network, or at the very least, toss them on your guest network, because that's going to segment everything off for your main traffic. Be smart. That's what it comes down to. Run firewalls, run antivirus on your computers, things like that, so that you can see these abnormalities. Check system logs and things like that, because you can monitor the traffic going through your router. And if something looks weird or erroneous, you can be like, why the hell is device XYZ phoning home 6,000 times a day? Maybe I should investigate that, or remove it from my network and see what that does. That there are things you can do right now to keep an eye on things. As it is right now, I don't have my stuff put off on a separate network at the moment, but I do have Eero has their Secure Plus tool that is part of that, which basically allows me to monitor every time a device reaches out, and I can see whether things are constantly phoning home, things like that. And my problematic devices are not my smart home devices. They're my cell phone, my tablet, things like that, where if you leave a tab open and God knows what ads are running in the background, it's constantly phoning home to refresh and stuff like that. So you can be smart, be safe.
Is that an Eero report that you have to go in and view, or does it notify you of a surge in reporting?
I get a weekly email and I can check the app at any time, but it does not notify me of any surges.
Do you have the Pro network, or do you have the network that came out before the Pro?
I have a combination of the Eero Pros and the Eero Beacons, but are all part of the Gen 2 line of products.
Okay.
And I did ask at Geeks Live, do you have any smart lighting? To which we had 60% say yes, but not Philips Hue, and 40% say no smart lighting. Let's go to Chris's news point before we quickly touch on something that just came out today that's going to make y'all scratch your head. Chris, what's going on out of the world of Amazon?
So we do know there's the competition between Apple, Google, Amazon. Microsoft was and kind of dropped out for digital smart assistants and smart speakers. So the real question is, in today's world, who is killing it in the smart speaker market? And it should probably surprise no one that Amazon is still crushing it when it comes to the smart speaker market. Apple and Google are still struggling to come close to Amazon's enormous share of the home smart speaker market. This is a trend that should continue through 2021. A new eMarketer report has predicted. Right now, some 70% of US smart speakers use an Amazon Echo device in 2020, close to last year's 72.9%. Next year, the number may drop slightly to 68.2%, according to this report. So Amazon has a lead that is slowly falling, but they are certainly dominant right now when it comes to the smart speaker that users or customers are using, rather. eMarketer says just 31.7% of smart speaker owners will use a Google device in 2020. And here's the kicker. Apple's smart home speaker products got mixed into the other category, which barely managed to crack 18% that people have used this year. Because remember, the HomePod does have the Apple version of the digital assistant. I won't say her name so I don't trigger, that you can make use of.
Siri? Are you talking about Siri?
Steven.
Hey, Siri. Is that what you're talking about?
Steven. That is bad practice for tech podcasts to purposely trigger people's devices to say, hey, Siri, subscribe to the GonnaGeek.com show.
That would be bad.
That would be really bad. So they do say one area where eMarketer says Echo devices fall short of the competition is language supports. They say Amazon products don't support as many non-English languages as their competitors. So that is an area where Apple and Google could potentially find some room to grow and start to push Amazon out of the way a little bit. Then eMarketer does also say that growth of smart speaker use in the United States will probably slow in the coming years, but the number of users will continue to increase as Amazon Voice Services, Siri, and other assistants expand beyond just the home and into cars and smart home appliances. The report estimates about 83.1 million people use a smart speaker this year, a 13.7% uptick from last year. So one of the things when I read this that I had to remind myself of is Google does not necessarily care as much about the smart speaker side of it. That's just another entry point to Google Assistant. Because remember, if you have an Android phone in your pocket, it has Google Assistant baked into it. And people are getting quite used to speaking directly to their phone to get things done. The same can be said for Apple. This is a point where Amazon does not have near as smooth a way to integrate. Because remember, they put their Fire Phone out. That didn't really work. You can put Amazon Voice Services on your cell phones. I know, for instance, in Android, you can set your default smart assistant to Amazon if you chose to, but why would you do that unless that's really your favorite one to use? And I think Steven and I have both run into this where we found that Google's smart assistant is just better at doing things than the Amazon one. You don't have to try and put the query together in just the right order for it to understand. You can say whatever you want to Google, and more often than not, you haven't seen that? That's how it's been for me.
We disagree on this. So for me personally, for any random non-smart home things, I agree. I think Google is better at that. I think at answering information. Smart home, you and I have had very different experiences. I personally find that Amazon is much more forgiving, and it's one of the biggest frustrations why I originally started trying to buy Google. I had Google devices and I returned them all because the Amazon I found just worked better from not having to be specific with my smart home. So that's my opinion, but I also know you have had a different experience. So this is where you and I disagree on this.
Okay, fair.
Question for you guys. Are we ever going to get to the point where we have a singular household, a singular device household, where the households are all inclusive in one of these architectures? You're going to have all of Apple. You're going to have all of Google. You're going to have all of Amazon. Do you guys see that happening?
If all you buy is products from that one company, sure, but you're never going to get to a point where your Google Home Mini can run Amazon or Siri on top of Google Assistant, because why would those companies do that?
Yeah, and the other thing I think is worth considering is the Apple factor, and I don't know that we have seen any indication that Apple's doing a good job with the smart speaker market compared to the other two options out there. And I don't think they're making the break into that market that they were hoping for. And it's almost feeling like it's getting too late for them to really do that. And Apple, for the foreseeable future, will have a very strong hold in the smartphone market, because there is a huge base out there that have grown up with Apple smartphones. And I don't see that going away. While their market share does dwindle a little bit here and there, I don't see that good chunk going away. So for that reason, I think the odds are you're going to have a lot of those Apple users probably have the A word or the Amazon or the Google one as well in their house. So then you're not getting all one ecosystem within that house because their phones are Apple.
I think the closest you'll get is they'll be able to make use of those apps and things like that. So for instance, if you want to play music on your Amazon device, you can set a default applications associated with, like, you can do it with Spotify right now and a couple other services. Theoretically, maybe you could see Apple Music or Google Play / YouTube Music becoming possible services for it. I don't know. But at this point in time, I don't really foresee them making their smart speaker devices work with other assistants, because those are probably sold at a loss in a lot of cases to get the services into people's homes and get them used to using them. That's where Apple differs. And we've touched on this before. HomePod is like $250, and that's really the only choice when it comes to an Apple smart speaker. I think some Sonos devices might support it too, but those are also not exactly cheap.
Yeah, Apple has been concentrating on their services now. Yeah, they have developed top-end phone. They have developed good wearables. They have developed, I don't know if you can call them wearables or not, the good the I wanted to say TicPods, the
AirPods.
Yeah, the earbuds. So they've developed all this stuff, and yeah, they'll make marginal improvements. I think with cell phones, we talked about it extensively the last couple of years that, yeah, it's good, but do I really need the latest and greatest this year? I think the services are going to be a big thing. Now, whether that applies to the smart speakers, I don't know. I don't think it does. So just like Microsoft pulled away from the AI, they disabled their Cortana and they pushed towards their big data services right now.
Yeah.
They won that big, huge government contract and surprised just about everybody, including Google. And that's supposed to be Google's specialty. And I think you're going to get different things happening within Microsoft and Apple and Google and Amazon, where they're all going to have really high end and capable things. They're all going to win in different areas. So the consumer is going to win if they ever get their acts together and say, okay, we're going to build these interfaces which can go back and forth within everything, which can happen with smart devices, but I don't know if that's going to extend to everything else. So I don't foresee a household in the future being a singular market unless you are just a total fanboy of something. You're like, I will only buy Apple, which is not me, but I will only buy Apple and I will only have Apple phones, tablets, computers, smart speakers, and smart devices. I think that's going to be short-sighted because you're just not going to have the availability, because Amazon, with their marketing, with their market behind them and everybody ordering online for this 1 hour delivery or 1 day delivery now, if you're in most major metropolitan areas, that you can get stuff delivered to you in a day. And it's just way better than going out to the store, because you consider the time, the expense on your car, the gas in your car, the wear and tear on your car, and then the $2 of shipping. It's a no-brainer. I'll pay the $2 of shipping rather than new tires on my car every 6 months, sort of thing. So I just think that things like that are going to come into play, and then we're going to have mismatched households for a long time to come. And for those of you who experience one architecture in your house tooth to tail, I bid you good luck with that, because as soon as stuff starts to turn in a few years and somebody else starts to win, you're no longer going to be on the top of the mountain.
Before we go to our final news point, I did ask a question at Geeks Live. I said, do you own a smart speaker? To which 17% said Amazon, 17% said Google, 0% said Siri, 50% said Amazon and Google, 0% said all three, and 17% said don't own one. So yeah, I technically I put myself, like, I would put myself as a Google person as well, because as my day-to-day is Amazon, but my phone is Google. I technically own Google Home Minis. Don't use them day-to-day, but my phone. And the last thing that I want to talk quickly about here, just a quick note, a quick head scratch, is that apparently, as of today, this was just coming out within the last couple hours. There's a few places that are posting this. The Birds of Prey movie, if you didn't know this, there's a Birds of Prey movie right now, is apparently undergoing a change. So you're looking at the sidebar if you're watching the video side of things, and you're like, wait a minute, Steven, you've got it written as Birds of Prey, spelled P-R-A-Y instead of P-R-E-Y, to which I'm saying that's intentional, because they are birds of preying for a box office change. You see what I did there? I know. Seriously, apparently the sales are not where they wanted them to be, and so they are changing the name, allegedly, at the box office from, quote, Birds of Prey, brackets, and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn, end quote. That's right. That's the title. Again, Birds of Prey, brackets, and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn, end bracket, to Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey. So, not surprised. Number one, I think there's probably lots of theaters where their character limit went, what? Too long. Number two, I think that people obviously know Harley Quinn, and they were kind of silly not to make that buried at the end of a stupidly long title. I don't know what this is going to do. I really don't. I think it's interesting to see. And I wanted to acknowledge right now and just say, number one, sales are down. SP loves to rag on DC. Here's your avenue. Two, stupid name.
Yeah, it underperformed by almost an estimated $20 million from where they were projecting. It was supposed to be like 50 to 55 million. I think it made somewhere between 30 to 35 million this weekend. But just think, guys, what kind of world do we live in right now where they can patch a movie after it comes out? Because remember, they put a day one patch out for Cats to upgrade the special effects because they weren't quite ready yet. And now a week into a movie's release, we're changing the name of it. And it's not terrible to do so. So who would have thunk, go back 10 years ago, that you could do something like that, which is like, oh no, the special effects aren't ready for Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight movie. That's okay. We'll rush out a new copy of it and make that come out. Well, they did that with Cats, and they can change the name of a movie just like that now.
Well, I'm curious to see, are they only going to change it? Like, are they actually going and modifying the title card? Because there's going to be a title card in there. Are they actually modifying the film, or just making the theaters market it under a different name, and they're going to leave the title card in there and solve it in final release?
So I plan on going to go see it this weekend. I couldn't make it this last weekend, and I will let you know what the title card says.
I was going to ask Chris if he saw it yet or not. I have not seen it. However, my daughter and her boyfriend went to go see it this past weekend. They said it was, without giving any spoilers, they said it was marketed wrong, and that it was really a lot more funny than they were expecting, that the preview showed. Basically, they said it was Deadpool-esque without Deadpool in it. But that Harley Quinn, Margot Robbie, was great in it. So I look forward to see what you think of it, Chris. I have not seen it. One of the reasons I didn't go see it is February. And it's not ubiquitous. It's not completely true, but a lot of the times movie theaters dump real crap in February, like Jupiter Ascending or something like that. And I just didn't want to give my time to something that might have been crap in February.
That's fair. But don't forget, for every Jupiter Ascending or things like that, you get a Deadpool or a, oh my God, I just completely brain farted. There was another movie, John Wick, that comes out in February where you're like, holy crap, this is really good.
And the other thing, as far as cataloging movies by month, December is often a decent month for movies, correct? Right?
There can be good stuff in December.
There can be, right? Star Trek The Motion Picture first came out December 6th, 1979. So
I thought you were setting me up for a Rise of Skywalker shot, I'll be honest.
So I just checked. John Carter aired in 2012, March 9th. So, we're safe. It's a good movie, but it came out in March, not February.
Well, there you go. So, yes, Birds of Prey is praying for a change. Thought I'd try that joke a second time. But that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for the official GonnaGeek.com show. If you haven't checked out the Gonna Geek Network, please check out the Gonna Geek Network. There's lots of amazing geeky content over there. We would love to have you check that out, GonnaGeekNetwork.com. If you check out Better Podcasting and you like to watch it live, SP and I did move that to Tuesdays, and we're on a bi-weekly release. If you want to find out more about that, check out episode, I think it was 217 of Better Podcasting at betterpodcasting.com/217. We talk about some of the reasons why we changed that, and it's largely to do with the fact that I was so jealous of the amount of facial hair that SP would grow in a week. And so this gives me 2 weeks every single time. But for episode number... I did it again. For episode number 320 of the official GonnaGeek.com show, I'm Stephen John Drew saying the motion picture sucks.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just rapidly recoding code for a spaceship right now. I'll get back to you in a second.
I'm Chris Farrell saying Steven encourages you to rewatch Star Trek The Motion Picture and let him know what you think.
By the way, SP's news point was why I watched it. I'm sure of it. You're responsible, SP. Bye.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the official GonnaGeek.com show. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts or a thumbs up on YouTube. You can always join us for our live recording sessions, which stream Mondays at 8:45 p.m. Eastern at www.geeks.live. And remember, you can find our full back catalog at gonnageek.com/show. If you're itching for more geeky content, check out other shows on GonnaGeekNetwork.com. Voice work was by Emily Prokop of the Story Behind podcast. That's it for this episode. We hope to see you back again next week.